All right, welcome everybody to a special edition of the BlackGirlFinMagic Show. We really thought it was super important to be talking about money and mental health, especially in our minority communities. I am extremely excited to have our panelists today. I'm going to have them each introduce themselves a little bit. So Camille, I'll let you start.
Okay, my name is Camille Wright. I have what we call Right Fit Coaching, where we do all things to help you become healthy physically and financially. And I am an Army veteran.
Oh, Eugenie, I'll have you introduce yourself next.
Hi, I'm Eugenie George. I'm an author of Our Money Stories. I took 2 years out to learn about women of color, and the questions that I asked was, what was your money story? And I basically took an anthropological approach to learning about money and mental health for all women of color.
Oh, this is going to be exciting to see your input today. Ashley, how about you?
Yes, hi, I'm Ashley Shands. I'm the owner of Financial Haven, and I'm a financial coach, and I help others get accountability in their budget, increase their credit score, and just set some goals to help them reach their financial goals.
Awesome. And Amber?
Hi, I'm Amber. I'm a doctor of physical therapy, board certified in women's health. So anything that affects women more than men, pregnancy all the way up to menopause. I'm also a yoga instructor, health coach, financial coach, and a teacher. And I'm the owner of Root Physical Therapy and Wellness, as well as Care for You First, working on generational wealth.
And Athena?
Hi, my name is Athena Valentine, and I am I'm the Latina behind Money Smart Latina, where Latinas and finance meet. Thank you, Camille, for your service. I want to say that really quickly before I forget. But I am at moneysmartlatina.com. Yeah, I'm at moneysmartlatina.com. You can find me usually on Instagram. And then I basically help you turn off the noise in your head so you can focus on your money instead. And I also am a certified trauma support specialist. So I work a lot with communities of color and how to remove trauma and work on financial resiliency and work on overall resiliency.
Awesome. That's why I'm so excited for our panelists today. And for all of you who are new to us, BlackGirlFinMagic is an organization that helps support women of color who teach financial literacy, or some in one aspect helps you with your money. So this is why we thought it would be really important for this month. It's National Mental Health Awareness Month. And a lot of people don't realize that our money stress really does affect our mental health. So I want to dive in and kind of, the way we grow is sharing our own stories. So my first question for you guys is, how has money affected your mental health? I'll start with you, Camille.
That's a question. Oh my gosh, if I can get through without crying and stuff. There is a time back in 2012. In 2011, I left corporate and started my own business and everything. So in 2012, I was doing health and fitness coaching and everything like that. And I was doing some contracts and stuff. So I got a contract from a person, and it was for a large sum of money. And lo and behold, that check that they wrote bounced. So as you know, as starting off entrepreneur, you grabbing everything that you can get to survive off of. And I got that check, and I just knew that it was good. I went to the bank to get some money, and the bank says you have no money. And I was like, you're mistaken. I deposited the check and everything. Like, yeah, but that check bounced. They said we sent it to their bank the times, and we couldn't get the money out. So we had to take your money to kind of help cover for what you lost. So as being an entrepreneur, single mom, that spiraled me. I got stressed out, started losing my hair. I was depressed, and it put me in a place like I wanted to commit suicide because I didn't know how I was going to recoup this money. The bank checks had bounced. I didn't know how I was going to cover those checks. And I had to go to a course for check writing. And I was mad because I was like, I didn't write the check, but they still said, you bounce checks. So you can either take this course or we're going to lock you up. So as a I just, I wanted to sit in that corner, sometimes and just rock in that fetal position because I didn't know how I was going to make ends meet. I didn't know. I was literally going crazy. I loved the dark because dark was my comfort because I could, kind of nobody was calling, begging, asking for this, asking for that. You're behind on this, you're behind on that. So I loved the dark. I didn't want to wake up in the morning because I loved the dark. I wanted it to be dark always because maybe dark would pass and the light would come. So that's, I had, so that's how it affected me. That affected me really traumatically. And it played a lot with my psyche, it just does a lot to you because money is essential to us. We need it, just like we need our health. Now, money is one of those essential things. I couldn't take care of my essential needs. And me being a woman, that superwoman, I took care of everything. And now I couldn't take care of everything and too embarrassed to go ask for help.
You make a really great point in the superwoman thing. We did an episode of that last year, but we hold so much responsibility to be the one that takes care of everyone. And I want to thank you for being very transparent with us. I went through something similar, not in a business aspect, but my first marriage was not a healthy marriage. And when I left him, I ended up having nothing. And there would be days where I had to decide to put the one little money I had into the car so I can actually get to work and make more money, or do I apply it to bills, or do I actually go get food so I can actually have something to eat? And so there'd be days and nights that I'd just cry that I was busting my butt. But yeah, I've been there in that sense. How about you, Eugenie?
So I want to make sure that I respect Camille and for her creating a safe space. I kind of had a similar story, but I was doing the same thing. I had a business and I was overworking. And so I worked so much that basically I wasn't paying attention to my money. There's a big shift, as Camille has said, that when you are working, you have a full-time, you have income, things are coming in. And then once you move over to having a business, that's when things can fall short if you're not paying attention to it. So I got an eviction notice. And the first thing that happened was I got in my car and I was like, okay, I'm going to change my life. And then someone hit my car. And so then I was like, okay, so now I got in a car accident plus I'm evicted. So how can I actually change this experience? So basically, I Googled eviction and success. And the first thing that I saw was a male, a white guy who wrote an article about how he was evicted, fired, and he also ended up having $1 million business or something like that. And I was like, well, this doesn't represent me and my story. So then I typed in Black women in eviction, and turns out where I live in Philadelphia, and then also in most of the areas, is that Black women are more likely to be evicted just in cities. So I was like, okay, here is some type of trauma porn. We know that this is a problem. And then the second thing was I saw this lady by the name of Ashley Fox, and she basically was a Black entrepreneur and talked about how she got out of it. So I saw something that was here's something that's really bad, and then here's a way that I can change. So then from there, I basically learned about this term called adverse childhood experiences. And anybody can, I think, Athena, you can talk about it, but I basically learned that my childhood experiences had a long-term effect with my mental health and my money. So I backtracked based off of the mental health aspect first, did therapy, did Debtors Anonymous. I'm still in Debtors Anonymous and Under Earners Anonymous. And then I started learning about my money in another way.
Athena, how about you?
Well, thank you, Camille and Eugene, for being so honest and transparent. Let's see here. So I have rapid cycling bipolar disorder, and I also have a few other mental health disorders that I deal with on a daily basis. And so I grew up not in a very low socioeconomic status until I was probably mid-class till I was about 12. And then my mom was terminally ill when I was in junior high, and she actually passed away when I was a freshman in high school. And so I had a very traumatic experience during high school. I was homeless for 2 years, and I didn't really have a stable environment where I could live until I was about age 20. And so that being said, I did have bipolar disorder, but it was undiagnosed at the time. And it didn't lead me, but I ended up actually blowing $3,000 in one weekend when I was about 27. I was manic. And if you know about rapid cycling bipolar or just, any mood disorder in general, you alternate between a high and a low. And so for me, I went and I blew through $3,000. And I to this day can't even tell you what I spent it on. And it's still kind of it's crazy to really stop and think about, but that was kind of a sign right there that I needed to get into therapy and I needed to figure out what was going on. And that's when I was officially diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And so that has led me to go on and become a certified trauma support specialist, so I can understand more about trauma. I can understand more about ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences, and I can really regulate myself. And so I think for me, money, it's just hard. It's hard because on the day I'm not sure what my mood is going to be. And because I'm a rapid cycling, I can alternate a mood between 7 to 13 times a day. And it's pretty exhausting. And so money can be a fickle mistress with me. But as of right now, I'm actually doing pretty good.
Well, thank you for being so candid and transparent with us. I think us all sharing our stories, there's anyone that can really relate to any one of our stories. So Amber, how about you?
Yes. Thank you everyone for being open and honest, because I do have different family members with mental health conditions and or diagnoses, I should say. But my story with money is a little different. My mom was the third oldest of 9. My dad, third youngest of 9, different parts of Texas. They somehow met right in college. And they were the first really generation to pull themselves out. And not all of their siblings did. So my connection with money is a little different because they started me with financial literacy when I was younger. And I became the first person in our family with a doctorate. The tragedy comes because before I graduated, my dad unexpectedly passed. And then right after I bought my home, I was saving my money, doing all the corporate work, building, going up the ladder. My mom unexpectedly passed. And so I had to really, manage myself because I was sinking into depression. I knew it, didn't really have the support in corporate world because, you're supposed to work. And it was supposed to be one of those things where, HR is calling you in hey, why aren't you smiling? Patients aren't complaining. They really love you, but you're not smiling as much. I'm I'm settling a state. What do you, that's 2 hours away. What do you mean why I'm not smiling? So during that struggle, and of course, going through the court, trying to figure everything out, because I already went through it with my dad, I knew what to expect as far as where to find, passwords, how to get through the insurances. So luckily I had that journey. But the hard part came where mentally I wasn't going to thrive in the corporate world anymore. You realize you guys aren't supportive of someone who was, loyal to the company and grew it in a large way. So I did branch off to become an entrepreneur. That was scary because I'm it's just me. granted, I have a large family, but it's just me, right? So having to learn how to make sure, because no one else in my family was an entrepreneur. I was doing this on my own, trying to figure out how to do this, support myself, make sure I didn't become a burden. And that was a struggle because during this whole time I was still grieving. I would definitely say the fact that I had supportive friends and family helped out with it. And my self-awareness to know like when I was sinking or when I was spending more than my normal. Like I know my spending habits. I'm a budgeter. Like I've been a planner. So whenever I would look at my numbers, like, what did you buy? Like where did you spend this money? I had to really self-manage myself. Again, grief and trauma.
Thank you, Amber, for sharing. How about you, Ashley?
Yes, and thank you, ladies, for your stories, definitely. My story definitely starts back to when I went through a divorce and, became a single mom to 3 kids. And at the time, I literally was starting over from scratch. And, I found a job, but I had to start off as a temp, and, the pay was low. And each day, the stress definitely was building for me. And, that weight is very heavy when you're thinking about money, you're thinking about, you're providing for your kids. And at the time, it was no child support. So it was just like me, and I felt the weight of that stress definitely. And I can remember at work one day, my boss had called me in for a review, and she was talking to me and she was saying positive things. And then all of a sudden, I just burst out in tears, just from holding all of that anxiety in and just telling her, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to make it. And, luckily she was, she knew, she was like, you're right where I'm at this time last year. And, she encouraged me. But that was one thing where I knew that anxiety plays a major role in dealing with money, because you can just be thinking about it and holding it in and not realizing you're holding on to all of that thing. So, and then definitely, I know it was a time I tried to move for another opportunity, for a job opportunity. And that anxiety was there once again, where you just overthinking everything and you're having, I dealt with anxiety attacks as well. And I can just remember having dreams at night, that will wake me up out of my sleep. That's how bad it was. So, yeah, I definitely will say that, money plays a big part in those things and trying to overcome those things.
Well, thank you again for sharing all your stories. And what I wanted to kind of add to that and ask each one of you, I know, Eugenie, you said you just dived in and looked and researched on people who have been in your situation and maybe find a solution. And Athena, you've kind of taken what you're going through to learn more about being a trauma specialist so you can help other people in your situation. I want to kind of mention, it took me a long time to realize that I was equating money and my money habits with my self-worth, because like Ashley, I went through that divorce and I didn't have self-worth at the time. And you don't realize, I was like, Amber, I was like, what am I spending all my money on? Why do I not have any money? I didn't really have a support system when it came to, or a mentor to teach me about money, let alone how to handle my emotions. And I feel like a lot of us in people of color community, whether you're in the Latinx community or Asian or Black, and I'm speaking generally, we have a hard time speaking about our feelings. And on the other aspect, we have a hard time speaking about money. Do you feel that this adds to some of our mental strain and our money stress? And I'm going to leave it open if anybody wants to pop in.
I will definitely say yes. Just dealing on the grief side, because, several people have passed. The difference when some people don't, because we don't communicate, certain things stay within your house, right? Like most people say, keep that in the house. Don't share those things outside. But that's a huge disservice, because different people are passing, and as we start speaking in our family, like, hey, y'all, get your wills together, get beneficiary, like get your life insurance. Don't talk about that. If I talk about it, then I'm going to, no, you're not. No, You're not. But that's something in our different communities that we don't exactly talk about death. And one thing that I talk about generational wealth, don't leave you want to leave a legacy and not a hardship, but we don't talk enough to be able to do that, to prepare our generations. And so it is definitely a big mental strain for us not to be open and communicate or have that resource for someone to be able to guide us through that at times.
I would say I agree with that. I would say that one of the biggest things is representation. So where we stand with representation even in the mental health space, as well as the financial space, the numbers are really small. So if you're in the financial services, there's about less than 2% are African American that are certified financial planners. There are 10% if you clump in all people of color, Latinx, Asian American, Latino, like everyone in it, it's 10%. And so that's a really small percentage. And so if you look at the way policies have worked, a lot of policies have barred folks of color to even have the conversations. So we're at the point where we're now gaining awareness. So the fact that Amber is able to talk about grief from her experience, that is kind of like a 21st century thing, because we've been barred literally, even now in some scenarios, we've been barred from having the conversation.
And real quick, I'm not going to bogart this part. My parents into having this understanding was the fact that my dad was a retired lieutenant colonel from the Air Force. So he had access to people that his siblings didn't. Even though, you could bring it to other people like, hey, y'all, I learned all this great stuff. Of course, people have to be open to it. But I will say that's what set me up to allow me to grieve and not stress about money, but truly grieve their loss, was the fact that he had access to it through military.
I think for a lot of Latinos, including my family, it boils down to like a pride thing. I remember when I was actually in middle school, and my parents were in the process of separating legally, and my mom took me to a therapist, and I actually went to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist said that, oh, she actually has borderline personality disorder, which I do on top of bipolar. And my mom did not agree with that. She didn't agree with the diagnosis. She didn't agree with, she didn't agree with the meds. She just didn't agree with any of it. And so it was okay for me to be anxious, but it wasn't okay for me to have all these other things. And turns out being anxious is actually a symptom of these bigger mental health issues that I already had. And so it was more of a pride thing. And that carried on in my life with me. It was okay for me to be anxious. It was okay for me to be depressed. But even at 27, I think I was 27. Yeah, I was 27 when I was diagnosed bipolar. I was so like, you're kidding, right? Like, there's no way I'm that crazy. I'm not crazy. I'm not eating soap. I'm not doing this and that. And so it was like a pride thing. And like my father, like even refuses to acknowledge the fact that I am bipolar. Last year, I had a really, really, really hard, I had a breakdown. I had a nervous breakdown last year, right before my birthday. And my dad was trying to call the police and have them go do a wellness check on me. And even at that point where he is on the phone pleading with me to get my address so he can have Phoenix Metro come check on me, he still didn't want to admit that there's something wrong. There's something my brain chemistry is wrong. He just thought, oh, she's having a bad day. And so, I think a lot of it for us might be pride. And I've even heard it referred to that white people thing by some of my cousins. But it's just, for some people, I think it's really a pride thing. And going back to the CFPs, how there is not a lot of us of color. At a couple years ago, I did a project with Cricket Wireless, and they actually had me talk to the only Latino CFP business owner in the country, and his name is Louis Bajas. And I was like, what? There's only one Latino owned CFP firm in the entire country. And they're like, oh yeah, here he is. can you interview him? You're Latina. And I'm like, okay.
I think too, going to not, just pride, it's a cultural thing too. It's culture, society. Like if you're not perfect, there's something, it's not okay not to be perfect. Cause back when I was growing up, I'm in my 50s and stuff, we didn't have that conversation around the table about mental illness. I didn't know what it looked like until I started going through what I was going through. Cause that's not a conversation that you have at the dinner table, or like if you're feeling a certain way, it wasn't okay to feel a certain way. It's like, well, dang, I know how I'm feeling, but why is it not okay to feel, this way? Because it's just society is telling us, no, you have to be this way. Mm-hmm. Right. And they're like, oh, and then it's just like, I know how I'm feeling, but who could I go to that would actually say it's okay to feel that way? There's nobody in the community and stuff like that. And then it's cultural too, and then, if you go talk to somebody, you're crazy, so it's just like, well, I don't want to be labeled as crazy. I just need to talk to somebody, and so it's, back then it was just like, it was not okay to have those conversations, about how you're feeling, your struggles and everything. So now, thank God it's more open. People are coming out. Yeah, I feel this way. And then it's okay to feel this way. Let's get you the help that you need.
Yes, and I would have to agree with what everyone is saying, because growing up, I didn't honestly know anyone who dealt with anxiety, or I never heard anyone really discuss anything of that nature. And I think I would say as an adult, I went to a therapist for the first time in my 30s. And, it was that stigma of, no one goes to the therapist. So I do think that that is something that is more needed. People need to kind of, be more open with that and use those benefits, because a lot of times we have that with our insurance. We're just not utilizing it, for sure.
And hopefully these types of discussions, and like Eugenie said, that it's changing now. We're being a lot more open, and hopefully it'll give people permission to, one, be okay with their feelings, and two, be able to go talk to a person. Cool. I did read an article, I want to say it's the National Council of Behavioral Health. And in the article, it said that just African Americans in general are less likely to go see a therapist and are more often dropping out before they're done with the process. They just kind of stop that, which is a shame. And I don't know any background, so maybe you guys can kind of give a little background or what your thoughts might be and why we don't follow through in finishing that.
I'll go after Athena. I know she wanted to say something.
Oh, I just wanted before that to quickly say, like, I know another thing too with a lot of people that aren't getting like help, or why they might not be getting help, is they don't perceive themselves as having the type of personality that someone would if they needed mental health. So for instance, a lot of people, and I'm only talking about myself because I'm only an expert on myself, and I'm not even, I would say that all the way, because I still have lots of work to do on myself. But I know for me, a lot of people have a hard time, like, even being like, you're not bipolar, or you don't have borderline personality disorder. What are you talking about? Because of my personality, and because I'm very outgoing, and because I think I'm funny. I like to crack a lot of jokes and stuff. And so people are like, there's no way, like, you're so joyous and you just have such a great energy about you. And I'm like, yeah, but you guys don't see the days when I can't get out of bed, or, and I'll be perfectly like honest. Sometimes the only reason I get out of bed is because of my cat. Like, if I don't go to work, I can't afford rent. You know what I'm saying? So, but it's true. And I think that's what stops a lot of people as well. I'm not sad. I'm not crying all the time. I'm not doing this. I don't look like this person. Maybe I don't need to go. And so, I don't know. It's just one of my little random thoughts I had.
I'll definitely say, granted, I cannot diagnose anyone because it's not in my scope of practice, but I'm aware of a lot of symptoms, from experience with family members to just over my years of working with various patients. I know that there's anxiety or depression that's going to affect their healing overall. But of course, I have to be careful with how I bring it up to them. I'm not going to say it the very first day I meet them. It's all about your approach, where you kind of bring things to awareness and, kind of make that connection. But I also teach a lot of people about advocacy, because a lot of my patients are like, no, if I go, and this is any healthcare, whether, they need to go to their PCP or any specialist. And normally I'm the gateway because I'm with patients for an hour. Most of the time you're not with any kind of, person for an hour. I've had to go to some of my patients' appointments with them as an advocate, because it's hard to speak for yourself if you don't know the language sometimes. And if the person doesn't know, in my field, we're taught you don't really know what you're saying if you can't speak to a layperson and they understand. But not everyone knows that, and not everyone takes the time, because healthcare people, we're burned out, right? So I think that's another part of why we as a whole don't go, because lack of access. I'm able to point people to the areas in our county where they do it on a sliding scale, and a lot of people are able to get free service. Not many people know about it. Lack of us asking, because oftentimes Ashley mentioned health insurance. Most of us don't know our benefits, so we just think about, I don't have money for a copay, so I don't have money for the medicine that they're going to prescribe me. And then even with that, medicine takes some time to get in your system. And kind of like with antibiotics, right? If you think about it, if they tell you take 5 days worth of antibiotics, on the third day, if you're feeling better, if you stop, it's going to come back. So the same thing with any other medication, we need to get it in our system. But if you don't have someone there telling you that, no one else in your family has that experience, it's hard to stick through with it and get that treatment. So lack of advocates in our community.
I was actually going to say,
and what you bring to Amber is advocacy, because it's a lot of that. It was a lot of that community, because I'm a health and wellness coach too, and a lot of people have diabetes and everything, and the doctor, they would I was a diabetes educator, and they would come to my class literally crying, and they say, you have told me more than my doctor. The only thing my doctor told me to do is, you have diabetes, go look it up. And we're like, wow. So it's just the lack of that empathy that they have to give to them. And then you don't know they didn't know the right questions to ask. So it's okay, when you go back to the doctor, write down these questions to ask them and everything. And when you come back to class, make sure you got an understanding. But it was just the people would literally be crying, because there's you were the first person to really help me understand diabetes and what it is, because my doctor just said, just go look it up. And I was just wow, this is really what healthcare is, for people in our community. This is really what it has come down to, which is sad, but true.
Well, and a lot of people don't understand, and Amber can agree with this. She's saying that, anxiety and depression that really prohibit through healing in any part of your body, especially physical. A lot of people don't understand that if you have consistent stress over time, and even if it's micro triggers, your paycheck is $5 short, or you're not entirely sure where if you're gonna make the groceries last the whole week, you have those micro stressors, and they build up your fight or flight response. So you have all this inflammation in your body, and that is why communities of color are affected more. You have the diabetes, you have high blood pressure, you have strokes, you have, just all this inflammation. And people are there have been studies saying that inflammation actually causes cancer. I mean, inflammation is the devil. And I think too, that's why a lot of our community is affected more by stress and by mental health with health issues. And I also think, because it's being recorded at the time of COVID, I think this is why communities of color are being affected so much at a higher rate than other communities, because of these health issues that they already have.
Sinead, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I always like to do the history side, the historical side, because that's what I like. I also interviewed 45 women, so it's not out of the air. But I would say that a lot of this has to do with two things. One, it has to do with cultural upbringing. So spirituality. 80% of African Americans have some form of spirituality. And so even if you trace back to history how your family reacts to mental health, a lot of people will say it's because that's the devil. And so that's kind of a really difficult conversation that you have to have. Plus, the biggest conversation or the biggest issue too historically is the Tuskegee experiment. So if most of y'all know what the Tuskegee experiment is, it was psychiatrists saying that they were going to go and help African Americans and gave them all syphilis. And so even that stigma, that's only 2 generations. So that stigma alone has people feeling like, oh, I can't get those resources. The other piece is just overall racial disparity in healthcare. We still don't have classes within the medical system that really talk about cultural competency. So because we don't fully have these courses, you have people, even folks that are registered nurses or doctors that are community colors, they're the ones that are like, hey, there's something going on here, but that's still 1%. So there does have to be more conversations around the medical community as well.
So I just want to check in with our audience. We have D. Ingram saying, love having a forum to discuss mental health challenges. Thank you all. Nikia Thomas says it's not okay for us to not be strong. And mental health issues were considered a sign of weakness. I'm excited that we are rejecting that theory. Crystal Hammond says yes. And Severine says, bravo for sharing, ladies. Therapy can be a lifesaver. Amber, you were going to say something. I apologize.
Oh, I was just going to piggyback off of just with my training with our doctorate program. So I went to a HBCU for grad school, private school for undergrad, and the Black community was strong. We had Blavity, okay? In fact, just for y'all random, that term was actually coined at my undergrad. I know, anyway. So when we went to you're thinking, yes, finally. There are so many studies showing the reason why a lot of minorities don't survive medical school or post-grad in healthcare is because we're the only one. So even though I went to an HBCU, there were 32 people in my class. 2 of us were Black, 1 Hispanic, 1 Asian. And so we were the token ones to be able to break down the stereotypes, right? And even the stereotypes that were mentioned about, oh, be careful because, people of color don't like this or like that. We're like, that's not true. But, they're using old information. We're like, no, like ask us, like we know, ask us. And that's just, that is out there.
Well, and really quickly, how you said like in graduate school, or I'm sorry, graduate school or medical school, like there's only a few tokens, right? And so I remember when I was graduating from ASU, I had several offers to go and study any like so many different doctorate programs in my field of criminology. There's not a lot of Latinas in law enforcement or in criminal justice. And they're like, oh, you can have this full ride. And I'm like, why? Because I'm brown. There's no brown people at their school. So, I mean, that does happen. And, it is kind of stressful when you are the only person of color in your class, or you're the only person of color in a field, because then people look at you and they just have all these stereotypes, and it makes it really hard. And I completely would understand why people wouldn't make it out in that program. It's really exhausting.
And then we're expected to treat patients, like,
yeah.
There's so much.
Yeah. And, and you go back
to them out.
And you go back to cultural acceptance and cultural competencies. And I mean, that goes for religion too, because, say we're all brown, we're not all the same religion, right? And so I didn't even know till I studied abroad for counterterrorism that Ethiopian Jews were a thing. And so I didn't know that. And then my boyfriend is Jewish, and I didn't know that when you pass away, you have a day to bury them. And so when his mother passed away, we were like, we got to get this funeral going. And then even then, there's certain things you have to do if you're Jewish. You can't wash the body. You can't embalm the body. You have to be dressed a certain way. You have to have a certain casket. I mean, and these are all different things that people in medicine don't automatically know off the top of their head. So, I mean, I think that's a huge training, like lack of training and knowledge.
And going back to coronavirus right now, so many people are passing. So thinking on top of that about our communities aren't able to depending on where, like especially New York, if they are unable to see, do the final farewell in any form, whatever that may look like to us, we're not able to. So then how are we healing? How are we in the community who are unable to see our loved ones for the last time healing?
Yeah, and something I would like to talk about what Eugene said. I think you had mentioned spirituality. I think it is important, for churches to push that a little bit more and talk about that and make it an open forum for people to seek that. Because I do feel like sometimes, people don't seek out therapy, and I think it should be a mixture of both of those things. We need church and we need God, and we need to be able to pray, but we also need to have that outside person sometimes too, to, let it out. So I think that's important.
I wanted to bring up something important that I don't think a lot of people talk about or really notice is Athena made a great point of some of us just like, oh, I don't have those typical symptoms that they associate with a certain mental disorder or illness. But I really want Camille and Amber to speak to this. You mentioned in your story, Camille, that you were starting to lose your hair. And I want to share that a lot of times our stress and mental illness can evolve into physical illness or physical ailments. And a lot of us don't associate that. Sometimes we think, oh, we just have a headache. I'm going to take some ibuprofen. I'm okay. Or I have back pains, consistent back pains. And you go to the doctor and doctor says, so you're fine. They don't realize that a lot of it is connected to your brain. So I'd love to hear some of your feedback and then your other ladies. So.
On mine, it was like the losing my hair. And then I was like, I would have this get up. I would go to bed just fine. Then I wake up, my stomach would be hurt and I would just throw up, vomit. Oh, it lasts for like 3 days and my stomach would just hurt. I was like, okay. So after a while, I went to the doctor and I was like, I get this migraine headache. But I said, it's something inside my stomach. It's just something just not right. And they're like, so, doctors don't know, and I was just like, it's something. So I've literally had to go through every single test for them not to find out what was going on with me. They were like, it's your brain, it's your brain. So I had to go get 50 million MRIs on my brain. My brain is fine and stuff. So here we're going to give you this medication. Just take this medication when you feel the migraines coming on. I said, but what about my stomach? My stomach, I can't take it. I'm just like, I said, because it's more on my stomach. It's whatever's going on in my stomach is making me have the headaches. And I'm just throwing up constantly. And my kids would just get like so scared because it would just be that violent throwing up and everything. And so I just started doing diagnosis on myself. I was like, I can't keep going back to this doctor because I'm not getting the answers that I need and stuff. And come to find out it was stress. It was the stress that I had because of my finances that was doing all this to my body. So when I just let go and I just like, you know what, make some changes. I had to make some changes in myself, sit down and, I'm in the financial services and stuff like that. And so when we sit down with our clients, we just say, let's go over your budget. So I had to do the same things I teach everybody else to do. I had to do it for myself to see what could I take away, because I was miserable. I was like, I would be in the bed for 3 days and I was just like, my body can't take this anymore. And I just couldn't keep going back to the doctor. So I had to just go over your budget. What is it, some of the things that you need to take out? What are some of the things that you don't need in your life right at this time until you get to a better place? And so that's what it was, physically. And then when I went, the doctor, I was just so mad. I was like, because we rely so much on doctors, and they couldn't give me the answers, but it took me to pinpoint what is the root that's causing all this. And what it was the stress of me, going through what I went through with my money issues and stuff. And like I said, we're over here on this side of my hair. It's like some hair still missing, but I do stuff in there, to get it to grow back and stuff. So, but it was just like, wash my hair, it just come out in gobs and stuff. And it was just the stress just overtook my body.
You actually did a perfect segue, Camille, because one reason why I'm calling root physical therapy is because I get to the root cause, right? Because most people don't think about physical therapy about that. But I joke and people call me the bowel gal. There's a reason for that. Your bowels will tell you a lot about yourself. Let me just put it that way. Definition of normal is 3 times a day to 3 times a week. Wide range, right? But you need to know your normal. Most of us don't know our normal. So the one time that it changes a little bit, we're like, oh, really? But that's one of our signs. The gut is connected so much. During my grieving process, and pictures tell a lot, by the way, right? Like I live in scrubs, they stretch. So I wasn't noticing I was gaining weight, but pictures told me. That was my sign of my stress and depression. I only gained weight in my abdomen. There was inflammation. I gained significant amount of weight. We don't think about that. We're like, oh, I just ate too many carbs, or my metabolism's slowing down. We don't make that connection like, no, you started gaining weight after your mom passed. Like that was your change. We don't make that connection. And that's normally one of the first things that would tell you something's going on. Whether it's constipation, whether it's looser. I know I'm talking TMI, I won't get into details, but I'm just saying a change in your bowel is really one of the signs that we don't think about. We think, oh, I have food poisoning. And it's like, no, you didn't eat anything new. The chronic headache is a big sign too. People constantly are like, oh, let me take Tylenol all the time. No. Maybe you're dehydrated. We talked about stress earlier. Stress is good for the body, but not at high level. If you wake up on a scale of 0 to 10 and every day you start at a 5, you don't have a big window. All it takes is you driving to work and there's traffic and now you're at a 10 before you get the day started. Versus those of us who may start at a 0 or 1, we have a little bit more wiggle room. So your body has a little bit more time to get to that peak. And so that makes a big difference too. So monitoring your stress levels and looking at your bowels. I often get people like, just think about how this time we're supposed to be still. Most of us aren't. Most of us cannot quiet our mind. It's hard to ask people to, try to count down from 10 to 0. Sometimes it takes people 15 minutes to do that without their mind drifting, because we do a lot. As women, we have so many things on our to-do list. We do a lot. And in finances is one of them that we're like, oh, I have to make sure the kids, I'm homeschooling them, and then I have to make sure I get up and go to work because I'm in a high contact area. All those things add up. And then when are we slowing down to really stop and breathe? We don't. So.
Did Ashley or Eugenie or Athena want to add to that? Sorry.
I mean, you're just talking that's literally what I'm going through. And I was just reading, I was like, does constipation happen because of COVID? Because we haven't been moving as much. And so us staying in the house all the time, I was like, something's not adding up. And then another thing, exactly. And the other thing is, like, I've had cysts in my thyroid, and my family's history is thyroid cancer. So even when I notice some type of bulge, that might be physical, but that also might be I'm not speaking up for myself. So Amber, I'm like 100% on board, because it's like that mind-body connection that people don't really talk about. That's actually the thing that's most important.
So I actually am a thyroid cancer survivor. So yay. But I think that I have all my autoimmune issues because of stress. And so, like I said earlier, when I was in high school, I was homeless for a few years. And, I was taking care of a terminally ill parent before that. And so I just, as Amber said, you're starting already your day at a 4 or 5, and then you just elevate and you can't calm down. And that's what I learned also in my trauma training was, that's why they're finding people that don't even have a huge traumatic experience are still ending up with PTSD, because their body is consistently in that fight or flight zone and they can't calm down. And so they're saying a lot of people, like I mentioned earlier, the inflammation and autoimmune disorders are caused by excessive amounts of inflammation in your body, and your body starts attacking itself. When I went under the knife and I had to have my thyroid removed, I actually had a cyst that it was the size of a golf ball, and it was on my thyroid, and it had lodged between my artery and my jugular. And that's how they caught it, was because I now had a bulb. And they looked, and the doctor said, I was 30 when this happened. The doctor said, you've had to have had thyroid cancer for at least 14 years for it to be that big. And it had spread through my lymph nodes and everything. And so again, with the stress and the inflammation, and I think that was a huge root cause of it. And I already have asthma from when I was born, but I really think it can destroy your health, and people don't even put 2 and 2 together. So every time I get a new autoimmune disorder, I'm like, oh, hey, add that to the list.
Yeah,
It's okay, we can laugh because I have to laugh.
Yeah, I love your attitude on that, Athena. But I mean, you're dealing with that like a champ.
You should hear my cat's health history.
Yeah. But I would just say that, Amber, I might have to try that exercise, counting backwards, because I'm one of those people where my mind does wander a lot. I'm always thinking. I don't know if that's an entrepreneur thing. Sometimes our mind is constantly going. Yeah. And sometimes I'm up all times of night, just up thinking. So that is something I think that is needed. We all need to kind of try to bring our mind in, and because that anxiety is really nothing to play with. And the biggest thing is just acknowledging what's causing it too. I think for me, that was something that helped me overcome it a little bit. It's just kind of figuring out, like you all said, what the root cause is. So that's good.
Stress kills. It literally kills people. So, we need to realize that it'll literally kill you. And is it worth it? I had to look and see, is it worth it? Is all the stress you're causing to your body, you're killing it. And I just had to let it go and do some, and some stuff, because I'm teaching you how to be healthy and everything like that. And I wasn't healthy. So I was like, practice your own medicine. What you're teaching other people, do it for yourself and stuff. And I had my homeostasis state was way up here. It was like, I was off the chain. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I had to learn how to bring myself back down.
You have to show up for yourself before you can show up for someone else. And so right when we had first begun working from home in Arizona, I work in education. And so Governor Ducey was like, we're done. We're not going back to school ever. And I was like, I had all my staff. I oversee a team of 12. And they're like, what do we do? What do we do? It's like Chicken Little. And I was like, well, I don't even know. What do I do? And so I hadn't been showing up for myself. And so that's when I was like, okay, we got to get together. How are we going to work from home successfully? Maybe we're going to put on some leggings. Maybe we're going to put on a work t-shirt. And maybe we're going to start showing up for ourselves. So then you can actually go and help all these other people who need you.
Eugenie wanted to say something.
Yeah. Okay. If you're aware of your trauma or your body or your family's history, there's a book for that. And so if there isn't a book for that, then that means you're the person that should write it. And I know that sounds really crazy, but that's literally how I wrote the book. Because I was like, okay, I know how money and mental health, I know that it's a thing, but no one has written about it. And so I encourage anyone that's really thinking about it, if you're already dealing with trauma and you're learning about it through your own self-healing, then that should be something that you should carry forth. I'm just saying that on personal experience, but going through this journey, I learned that I have anxious attachment. I know that, my trauma is based off of this. I know that based off my ACE score between 2 to 3, that I'm going to have these triggers. And so once you start understanding oh, this is me being an only child, or oh, this is me my ancestors telling me this. I think that's really important. For the most part, there's a lot of books to help you understand where you are. And if there isn't, then you're supposed to write it.
I love that. Watch out,
that.
world. I just got another project added.
Write it down.
I love that. And we have about 6 to 5 more minutes. There's one more thing before we leave that I would like each of you to kind of add. Now that we've talked about how money stress can really affect us, both in our mental health and our physical health, I would love for you guys to share maybe one thing that the audience might be going through right now that they can do to kind of help them take that next step forward. So I'll start with you, Camille.
One thing that they can do is basically do what you can. We are in a, what do they call it now? New normal. So what does that look like for you? Because now you've had this time to reassess yourself and your finances. And so going forward, only do what you can do so that you're not putting on that stress. You're not getting being anxious and getting into that depression, because we've had this time now to reevaluate, let go and not pick it back up. So moving forward, do what you can do, and then get the resources, get the help that you need, because there are a lot of them out there. And if you're afraid to quit, I guess we have to quit being afraid to ask for help.
Love it. How about you, Ashley?
Right.
Yeah, I would like to encourage, everyone out there, if once you uncover kind of like everyone was saying what your root cause is, be proactive about doing some affirmations, doing some positive things that help you move forward past that, because there is, hope on the other side of that. So once we uncover kind of what we're going through, what's causing those things, definitely I would recommend like reading some positive things, speaking life unto yourself and doing some positive affirmations to help you overcome some of those things that you're going through.
Thank you for that. Eugenie?
I'm the complete opposite. I would say if you're upset with what's happening right now, go on your computer and set a 5 to 10 minute timer and write out all the stuff that's causing you stress, and then erase it, because you don't want anybody else to read that, because it's probably not completely positive. But right now, because we're all at home, we're not, because it's our new normal, we're not, we're in a safe space, but sometimes we're not in a safe space mentally, physically, emotionally. So sometimes it's good to just be cathartic and get it out, and then erase it if you can. But if you're living alone, write all you want and just keep it. But yeah.
Athena?
So I had to go and find my notes from the BlackGirlFinMagic talk that we did a few weeks ago, because there was something that I wanted to bring up. And so in trauma-focused therapy, there is a concept called the 3 domains of change and how you can build resistance. And so they talk about 3 different domains of things you can take on that build resistance and help you work past your trauma and help you be able to handle stress, that kind of thing, better. And so, like I mentioned earlier, you have to show up for yourself. And so one of the domains of change is change the perception of yourself. And so while you are inside, or you have to be inside, and we're all on lockdown, now is a great time to start working on your perception of yourself, or however that looks. So I used an example earlier that I had to show up for my team before I could show up for myself. And so I would start thinking about different ways and different things you can do to show up for yourself, to help you start changing that perception. One of my big things during quarantine is I have taken all the extra money I would have spent eating out, or I would have been spent going out with my friends, and I took that and I actually redecorated my apartment. And so I was like, you know what? I deserve a clean, calm place. And so I went, and I mean, I didn't like go balls to the walls with it, but I like bought a new shower curtain for $10. I bought a new rug. I went and I cleaned my apartment. I got a money tree. And so I think that actually is a great thing right now to start thinking about, is things that you think you deserve. And I mean, obviously we all think we deserve $1 million and all the Lamborghini, but I would really just start thinking about things that you think you deserve personally. Like, you do deserve a nice clean space. You do deserve a safe environment. You deserve a calm place. You deserve a place to rest your head. Like, basic human needs and rights, you deserve that. And so I think this is a good time to start really thinking about those things that aren't being met and how you can change it to where you think you can meet that and you deserve it.
And Amber, how about you?
I would kind of wrap it up by also saying this is a good time to get your baseline in health and wealth. So kind of knowing that's really how you're going back to being proactive rather than reactive. This is the time for you to kind of see what's your current weight, what's your resting heart rate, how much sleep are you getting? Because sleep hygiene is very important during this time. But then also going into wealth, I know we don't want to talk about it, but we have to always address assets and liabilities. You have to know your baseline numbers, just because, I mean, how else are we going to get our action plan and grow? And you can pace yourself, especially if you're home right now, pace yourself, and just it's better. Knowledge is empowering you. So that's going to be the key thing. You'll know how to actually take the next steps forward.
I love it. I will just only add, I like to tell all my clients, my coaching clients, that they are whole, creative, and resourceful. So for the audience, don't feel like you have to make the giant leap. It takes baby steps. So give yourself grace. Just do that one thing that you can do right now. If it's being able just to sit down and look at your finances and figure out your baseline, cheer yourself on doing that. So just take it one step at a time. Know that you're not alone. Everybody's story is different, but you're not alone. And I am so happy that we had this discussion today. I want to thank each and every one of you ladies for, one, being transparent, sharing your stories, and wanting to be on here to have this discussion. And so we're going to end. I would love for the audience to know how they can follow you if they want to continue learning or connecting with you. So I'll start with you, Camille.
You can reach me on Instagram at Right Coach and Facebook at Right Fit Coach.
And Ashley?
You can reach me on Facebook at Financial Haven and on Instagram at Financial Haven INC.
And Eugenie?
You can reach me at Eugenie George on Instagram.
And Athena?
You can reach me on Instagram at Money Smart Latina, and you can also check me out on YouTube and my website, moneysmartlatina.com.
And Amber?
You can reach me on Instagram for physical therapy at Root PT and Well, and for health and finance coaching at Care, 4 You First.
Wonderful. Even if we're closing up right now, continue to have the conversations here in the comments in YouTube or Facebook, or you can join our Master Your Money Facebook group. It is public. Feel free to have a safe space there. And if you've watched the replay, thank you for joining us. And everyone, you have an amazing evening.
Bye.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, guys.